So you're a father, huh?
I don't know.
What you mean you don't know?
Well, I think she's lying. I don't think it's my kid.
There's Always Vanilla turned into almost a retro Hollywood movie. And that was a real mistake because it lost its pizzazz and what its power would have been and what we were perfectly capable of doing but did not pull off.
Well, you better get it straightened out, Chris. Here comes my train.
It was hard to shoot. Took them over and over, and you know, they spread it out, it got disjointed, and George was never satisfied with it.
I think for any creative person, somebody who pours their heart and soul into a project, that it's always disappointing when it falls down on the marketing end of things.
We always had talk around the shop that literally the distributor took the distribution rights as a write-off. That's the amount of energy that they gave to the film. If that wasn't the case, that was certainly the result.
Are you all right? Shit!
I think the film is like a walking time capsule of that period. This was a very light, frothy kind of movie. It was a sweet film, and you had to like the characters. So I believe that's where it stands.
Say, girl, you know you almost killed me.
I'm sorry. I missed the train.
Well, what's more important, catching the train or a human life? My life.
Catching the train.
How should I, my true love, know from the other one? By his cockle hat and step and his sandal shoes.
Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the Living Dead.
After Night of the Living Dead, we still had the tin cup in our hand, so we were indeed looking for investors.
Soon after, you know, the original burn of Night went out, we went back to commercials. We were back in commercials for a while, and immediately we much would rather be shooting feature films because we had control. We didn't have to answer all these stupid questions, you know? We could actually just get work done. But we were broke.
I have a chapter in my autobiography that I just wrote called Fame Without Money, and I talk about the consequences of having all this fame and notoriety, but yet you're broke. How do you launch into another project, which we very much wanted to do.
Although I have to say the second time around, investors in the financial community took us a little more seriously than they did the first time around. So the money-raising chores were not exactly as excruciating as they were the first time around.
Our idea was that we weren't just horror filmmakers. Right off the bat, we wanted to disabuse people of the notion that that's all we were capable of and that this first movie was some kind of fluke.
We wanted to get involved in a project that was a little bit more reflective of the times, and I have to say also, the cusp of the late 60s into the early 70s, there was a lot of social turmoil, there was a lot of political turmoil. Rudy Ritchie, who was a close friend of ours for many years, and also a very talented writer, had this concept for, if you will, a sign of the times kind of project related to young love, a little bit older than coming of age, but the struggle of a musician trying to make it in a commercial world, which he was really not suited to.
George owed Rudy a favor. Rudy was going to collect. And so Rudy had this great little half-hour film.
We had done this screen test film for Ray Lane, and Rudy Ritchie wrote some sketches that involved two characters, one of them played by Judith Ridley and the other Ray Lane.
Well, Raymond Lane was a friend of ours, again, for many years, and Raymond was a really serious live actor. He did some remarkable stage work. He also tried his hand at the Hollywood scene, which did not quite work out so well because the stories that we were hearing and the stories that I think he was getting, he was a little too Steve McQueenish for the Hollywood set. So there were a lot of things that he auditioned for, but a lot of things that he didn't get. I remember that he was, once or twice appeared on the old TV series, The Dating Game. So, and that's a little tough for a serious actor to get relegated to the second and third spot on the Dating Game TV show. not exactly an ego builder.
I first met Ray at Latent Image when he moved to Pittsburgh from California, where he'd been living. And Ray actually lived with Russ and I for a time. And he was very nocturnal. I do remember that.
He never liked us to call him, he never liked anyone to call him Ray. He always wanted to be Raymond Lane. And we all respected that pretty much, but every once in a while we would just slip into good old Ray Lane.
He was a very generous actor and partner in a movie. And he was a very strong lead. And I realize now what a great presence he was in that film. His character was very strong, and he made me look good, I thought.
What do you intend to major in?
Now that's frightening.
What?
What do you intend to do with the next 50 or 60 years of your life?
I mean, Ray and I were great friends in those days. You know, I mean, we were out all hours, drinking, shooting pool in some cases, and whatever, smoking a lot of marijuana. And a lot of times we'd leave the studio. I lived by that time I was married and lived on Parkline Drive in about 8 miles from downtown Pittsburgh. I had a nice townhouse apartment. And so we'd pick up a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken and head to my apartment and put Neil Diamond or whatever on the music. My wife was an expert joint roller. Man, she was good at it. I had to use the machine, you know, push that lever over and crank them out that way. But she'd sit there and we'd laugh our asses off because we'd get the giggles, you know.
When he returned to Pittsburgh, we knew that he had the acting chops to take on a role like the one in There's Always Vanilla / The Affair. It was an audition tape for him, is how it all got started.
It was used at a press meeting. Rudy was invited to prepare something for one of their big annual meetings.
Well, the thing had just fantastic charm and charisma to it, and we loved it. It turned out into a half-hour film.
It was a very short film, maybe 15 minutes long, and I remember George was filming it, and Ray and I were on the sofa. Ray's head was on my lap, and I think Ray had cut his finger, and I was looking at his finger, and we were just talking. I don't think I was aware that we were being filmed, and I think they thought we had a very nice relationship, which we did. He was a wonderful man. But it was just, we had a good rapport together, and I guess we worked well. Ray was a fabulous actor, very strong. And so that was the beginning.
And was entered into the Visual Communication Society Awards show. They did that every year, and mostly for advertising films. and here it won a gold medal. So that was something to plug. And so George and I started thinking, well, why doesn't Rudy expand this, use these two characters and write a full-length script? The Graduate had come out as the top grossing picture of that year. And so youth-oriented pictures were taking off, you know, the whole spate of things that led to Easy Rider and Goodbye Columbus and so on, and some less successful, of course, because not everything's going to be successful.
And we just wanted to explore some of that, and I think the montage early in the film, looking at abstract art, kind of sets up some of that, that feeling of not quite fitting in.
This was a very different film from Night of the Living Dead, but it was just a natural progression. It was talked about. It was just the next thing that was happening with this group of people, and Rudy Ritchie was very involved.
We're beginning to come apart at that time. Where Night of the Living Dead had been a real group effort, everyone contributing and free to contribute. I mean, George asked for contributions. It was made in a not the way it normally is done, with a strong central authority. This was more democratic, Night of the Living Dead. Vanilla was different. Vanilla was more traditionally made. We had a director who knew what he was doing. We had a writer who wanted to direct, thought he knew what he was doing. There was conflict constantly.
Action.
You're a frumpy little chick with your brains in your ass.
You have a piece of spinach in your teeth.
Cut. Perfect.
We didn't have the wherewithal to even come back and go through the $600 routine, you know, and get enough money to buy the film. So we decided, well, let's just shoot it in between all our commercial work. And I think that's where it met its first challenge, because it didn't have that synergy that Night had. It didn't have the, you couldn't build up any momentum.
Quiet, please.
Slater.
We had our $100,000, but Rudy was still being recalcitrant. I used to go see him to cajole him into, come on, man, you're getting an opportunity. You know, this is something people would give a lot for, to be able to be writing our second movie, but you couldn't budget a guy.
Rudy, throughout his adult life, was a kind of guy that he would have really great ideas that somehow never got followed through on. You know, he had many, many story ideas, good ones, good story ideas, that somehow ended up in a cardboard box in his garage.
I mean, it was just like, it was like talk about a riddle inside an enigma, inside a conundrum. That's what it was like trying to deal with Rudy.
I think he fancied himself more of a poetic writer, that his statements were world-changing, culture-changing, but it's really hard to change the culture when the bulk of your work is in a cardboard box someplace.
It just went on and on and on. Judy had lost weight for the role, you know, to look better on camera, and she kept herself in really good shape. It was one hell of a strain on her to go months and months and months staying totally fit, and, you know, while all these struggles were going on.
Chris?
Hello, lady.
Here.
I'm from the Fornicator Society,
Older,
and I would
Chris.
like to
Nobody
ask you a
could have
few
seen
questions.
I don't think I had great desires to continue acting. It just kind of leaped in front of me, and I had an opportunity, and I took it. The character of Lynn in the film, I think George wanted me to just play her as naturally as possible. It was really Judy playing Lynn.
You know, I truly believe that someday the whole world is going to go out like that.
Remember, we were pretty young. We were young. We were very self-conscious. Certainly I was. When I saw rushes of my first scenes, I said, George, I can't never look at these brushes again. I'm just too embarrassed by it.
Look, how do you want it? I'm tired of playing games. I mean, moonlight and roses or sleeping bags in the desert.
Richard, in person, is larger than life. He's a very dynamic man and a lot of fun, very serious and very intense. And he portrayed that very well in the film.
Richard always had a flair for the dramatic, always. And to that extent, his character was typecasting.
Could I please have my talent, unless you're prepared to pay the overage?
See you later.
I am not an actor. Never called myself that, never trained for that, never felt I had the soul of an actor. But man, shit, yeah, I do enjoy it. Who doesn't?
Tell me something. Isn't that cheating?
Cheating.
Yes, making the beer look better than it actually looks.
You're standing there talking to me because of that beer. I'm standing here talking to you because of that beer, and everybody that's in this room is in this room because of that beer. All of our salaries, our very existence depends on that beer. And we're all here to make that beer look as good as we possibly can.
Okay, come on, everyone, quickly. Places, please.
When we made the creative decision, and some of the story points in There's Always Vanilla or The Affair, we did realize that we were in some ways biting the hand that fed us. The Latent Image, by the way, was a fairly successful production company of TV commercials and industrial films and business films.
Latent Image was all about the commercial world, and that was their bread and butter. That's what paid the bills and paid our salaries.
The whole Latent Image, the whole Night of the Living Dead thing, all of that stuff fell purposely, not purposely, but perfectly, you know, into the right time. It was, we offered something that the city of Pittsburgh needed.
We worked cheap. We did great work at bargain basement prices.
And people liked us, you know, we worked with clients and we worked, you know, not only with the agency, but their clients, and they liked us because we were their neighbor, you know, otherwise, you know, we were somebody's son, we were somebody's, you know, so there was this real symbiotic, and I think that continued through still today, you know, I mean, we're all down to earth Pittsburgh people.
The thing is, we were very good at what we did. And that picture shows that. I mean, the production for $100,000 cash, the production's top quality, and it really recreates the flavor of what the 70s were like.
Because Latent Image and we as individuals were becoming fairly well known, it made it a little easier to secure the locations that we needed for There's Always Vanilla. Just simply because people knew that we were viewed as a little bit more than a one-trick pony.
We wanted to use the best of Pittsburgh in terms of, but it had to be apropos for the script too and for the movie we were making. But Pittsburgh is a colorful city, and you know, we used the Incline and Kennywood and the Civic Arena and the local restaurants and stuff, that all the zoo, you know, where Judy and Ray are holding lion cubs. That was just part and parcel of what we were going to do as filmmakers, and what we always did to, you know, to wisely use the locations that were available. Also, the Ektachrome commercial film stock with the low ASA, I mean, it was murder shooting. In those days, it was murder shooting interiors. You know, actors were always sweating, and you had to have the makeup girl right there and blotting them, and you know, it's laughably easy to make a movie now. I don't know. We had to have tremendous zeal to make movies to go through all this stuff, especially with 4- and 5-man crews and so on.
You're going to give me a reputation.
Well, so what? What's wrong with a reputation? Without a reputation, you're nothing.
George would get on the same level as the actor, and they would just talk with them and explain the situation, what the scene was trying to convey, and he was so patient. He never raised his voice. He spoke very softly, and you felt very comfortable. You didn't displease him ever. He would say, let's do that again. He was gentle. He pulled things out of you, but you didn't realize that he was doing that. You were just, it was very natural. He didn't want you to do anything that wasn't within the character or within your ability. This was especially true for me.
I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. People just aren't like that.
George really had his hands full trying to take these fragments of bits and pieces, starting with the fact that the script segments were slow to come. And from a production standpoint, that sometimes is the kiss of death. As a producer, trying to put these pieces together in a coherent fashion, but you're not really sure what the pieces are or how they're going to look or how are we going to pull this off at the last minute, is not an ideal way to approach any project. But George himself, he really had he had his work cut out for him in terms of directing and trying to pull this together, these disparate pieces, into a coherent flow. And I think he did a pretty good job of it. Certainly the narrative pieces from Ray Lane helped to carry that story.
It could have been that I got involved with the chick just simply because I wanted to have an excuse to stick around and take care of the other situation. I don't know. It could have been any number of things.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge. It's, you know, it just was.
It just wasn't what we were capable of in an elemental way. So there you have this movie with the production values and its evocation of that time is good, but the story and just feeling of it is not there.
We just weren't cohering. I did not enjoy the process. Nobody liked anybody anymore. There were valiant efforts, but they came apart. Everybody drifted.
What the hell is this?
After the release of the film, I wasn't working at Latent Image anymore. I had retired. Russ and I were married. We were newlyweds. Life had taken a different turn for me. I wasn't really involved in the business at all.
By the time the film was ready to come out, George and I had parted company as business partners. So I had very, very little, almost no voice in with Lee Hessel and with Canvassed Films.
Hessel's girlfriend loved the movie, and because she loved it so much, he thought he would distribute it. And then he changed the title to The Affair, and it came out then. By that time, Russ and I had left the company, and with Rudy had formed New American Films.
I thought that they did not do a good service to the film. Their intentions might have been great, but the marketing of the film kind of missed the market.
I think if it would have somehow gone to a more sympathetic distributor that maybe saw the real value of it, maybe a distributor would say, you know what, we want to put $50,000 into this and we want you to go back and tighten up all the areas that you're uncomfortable with.
The ironic thing is, when it was first shown in the theaters, it was kind of weirdly dated. Things change so quickly in our culture and, everybody's culture, so things happen like in the movie, Judy has an abortion and she has it the old way before abortions were legal at all, and she goes to a quack where she could have died having that abortion, and a thug played by George Costanza, who was also the sheriff in Night of the Living Dead, and it's a very gruff and tough scene, and she gets through this abortion. Well, that got laughed at at the premiere, because the movie was being shot in 1970 or 69, 70, and by the time the premiere happened in 1972, that kind of abortion was passé, gone. That's how quickly things get dated in our culture.
Things were changing so rapidly, and I do think that it captured the sense and the essence of the time. I think that was captured pretty well, frankly.
You know, you are never gonna make it on TV.
What?
Your butt's too big.
What?
Come on, my Jeep is right out there. I'll give you a ride.
Apologize first.
Do you want a ride?
And we'll all go together to Peak Wild Mountain Time all around the blooming.
I think that all film, all images that can be captured in their own way become a time capsule of sort. Whether it's inadvertent or intentional, you are creating a time capsule. And that film, like all films, I think captured its own little sliver.
Okay, let me see the kiss. You're close, you're tender, involved, kissing, background people happy. Come on in the background more people.
The film has aged well, because now that people aren't watching it with that narrow time span and looking at the authenticity of that, now they're just viewing it as a look back at a very interesting time in our society, and it recreates that time very well.
Oh, my God.
Hi, Popsy. How's every little thing?
I think Vanilla came back to the exact same reason for doing that was the reason for doing Night. We got tired of doing other people's work. And we did it, and it didn't catch, and the magic wasn't there like it was with Night, which you know, that can only happen once, I think.
It's not important to build skyscrapers and highways. What's really important is building bridges.
All that good juice came apart when we were making Vanilla. But it still has enough craftsmanship. George's editing, even the lighting, bizarre as it is, works for that movie for some reason. It just draws your attention to what's going on. Ray Lane, brilliant actor. We loved him. He was our teacher. Damn. And Judy, that innocence, that quality, unbelievable, natural. Hardly ever see it anymore.
Are you a virgin?
How many girls have you made it with?
I've actually thought in my older years that I would really enjoy another chance. I think I would be a much better actress now. I've lived life. I didn't think I conveyed expression very well in the film. I thought I was kind of static, and I think I could do a much better job now.
I've been in town over 24 hours now, and I'm still just arriving.
It was our second attempt. It got us, hopefully, out of the horror film pigeonhole. But that film really never got the right kind of distribution support. And I'm glad that now, these many years later, that somebody is at least showing some interest in, again, in another one of those early works of ours.
What do you think they'll find on the moon?
Do you like Italian food? Chinese food?
Did anybody ever buy anything because of a television commercial?
Have you ever been to a cat house?